What up everyone, Clayton here, and today we're back with another Skyrim build. Today's build is called The Mountain. The Mountain is a Nord with very little backstory. There's not very much known about his past because he does not talk about it very much. All we know is that he lived in a shack near Riften with his family as a child. One day his family disappeared. Whether they were kidnapped or killed by bandits, no one really knows. He wandered around Riften for many years, until he left Skyrim and went on his own adventure. He's been gone for 10 to 15 years, no one really knows. And for whatever reason, he decided to show back up to Skyrim as soon as the dragons and the Civil War started. Whether he's here to make sure that both of these things end so Skyrim's at peace, or if he came to profit from it, no one really knows. All we do know is he is now Dovahkiin and has the power to accomplish both. So this build is pretty much your generic two-handed user that uses heavy armor and just pretty much chops up everything he can. The main skills for this build are Restoration, Enchanting, Smithing, Heavy Armor, and Two-Handed. For Restoration, it's pretty much just keeping yourself alive. I do recommend getting the Avoid Death perk. This perk allows you to gain 250 health automatically when you fall below 20 or 10% health once per day. That's pretty good, and it's kind of your oh shit button if you fall low, which you shouldn't really do since you're pretty tanky with your heavy armor. Enchanting and smithing's here just to improve your weapons and armor. I would not recommend enchanting your weapon, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but I would just hold off enchanting your weapon because there's some minor benefits if you don't. Smithing is pretty important because I want to make sure your stuff is as best smithed as possible. And if you want to do what I do in this build and use the steel plated armor, it is actually under the advanced armorers perk on the left side of the smithing tree, so make sure to pick that up instead of going down the heavy armor generic side. Heavy armor is there to make sure you're tanky. The conditioning perk is very recommended because it allows your heavy armor to weigh nothing, so you can run around on the battlefield as fast as you want. Two-handed is obviously the greatest skill you can have for this build, since that's what you're going to be using as your main damage. There's many things in this perk tree that give you critical damage, such as the Deep Wounds, which allows your Great Sword to have a 20% chance of doing critical damage, and the Great Critical Charge, which is when you're doing a running power attack, it'll actually crit every single time. So what this means is this build is pretty strong, and it actually does a lot of critical damage, so it does twice as much damage as it normally would, and I kind of like playing with all this critical damage. Kind of feels like you're playing an MMO a little bit. So for the weapons and armor, let's touch on that a little bit. I use the steel plate armor because I think it looks the best, and we don't really know much about the Mountain. He's kind of mysterious, and this closed off helmet kind of gives that feeling of no one really knows anything about him. He's just kind of a guy in his armor, and he kind of just does his own thing. The Dragonbone two-handed greatsword is what I use. It does the most damage, second to that of the Daredek sword, but I really like it, and I think it looks really cool with this build. I think the sword just looks pretty slick, so that's why I use it. So there's one shout that I want to talk about, and that's why I say do not get your weapon enchanted, is the Elemental Fury shout. So this shout allows you to swing lightning quick with your sword, and if you have it enchanted, it won't work. So this will make it so you do way more damage because you get way more swings. This means you have more chance of getting criticals, which makes your damage skyrocket. So I recommend doing that. Also, the Lord Stone is pretty good on this build because it gives you armor as well as magic resist, magic resist is something you really need with this build because mages are kind of what really kick your ass because they have range on you and your own melee. Also, for the health and stamina split, I go with 60-40. You need a lot of health to stay alive, and you don't really need magic at all, so I don't put points into that at all. And if you would rather have more stamina, maybe 50-50 split would be best, but I recommend having more health, that way you can take more hits and you don't die all the time. And that's just how this build really works. It's pretty much just your berserker two-handed build. The reason why I make this build is because I really enjoy this playstyle. It's probably my favorite playstyle in the entire game, and I just wanted to show you guys this new idea that I had for this backstory where you can kind of make up your own mind of really how you want to play the game. You kind of play as a mute character, so pretty much all the options you can, you use one of not say anything, you just kind of want to do your thing and let your actions speak for you. And I just really like these two-handed builds, so hope you guys do as well. If you do, make sure to check out these two builds here, hopefully you like them as well. And this is Clayton, signing out.